Hi, this is Mike Fauché, and in today's video, I'm excited to cover the new TerraMaster F2-212 NAS unit. The F2-212 is a newly updated NAS that's a feature-rich, low-cost alternative that focuses on the ease of use and security. If you want to find out more about the TerraMaster F2-212 and how it stacks up as a home NAS, then watch the rest of this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you find this video useful, as it does help support the channel. Full disclosure before we get into it, TerraMaster did reach out to me and offer to send me the device for testing and feedback, but they didn't pay or influence this video in any way. The testing and opinions are my own, and they haven't seen the video before it was published. I did want to thank the team at TerraMaster for sending me the hardware and making this video possible. Today we're going to look at something a little different, the TerraMaster F2-212. As this is the first time running a TerraMaster, I was curious to see how it would stack up in a very competitive market. This device comes in at a very attractive price point, and I was eager to test their TOS 5 operating system to see how it compares. As I mentioned, this is my first TerraMaster device, so you'll be going through this setup with me for the very first time. Before we actually get into the setup, features, and testing, let's quickly cover the specs, hardware, and see what comes in the box. The package is pretty simple, and in the box you get the device itself, a power supply brick, drive labels, SSD screws, and warranty and installation cards. The device comes with a Realtek 64-bit ARM processor that runs at 1.7 GHz and comes with 1 GB of DDR4 memory. It supports video hardware acceleration and 4K encoding and decoding capabilities, which I'll be testing in a future video. Looking at the back of the device itself, you have a power switch, a USB 3 port, a USB 2 port, and below that is a 1 gig Ethernet port and the power input jack. Moving to the front of the device, there's no ports, buttons, or switches of any kind, giving the unit a really simple industrial look, which I like. This model has two hot swap bays, and when you push on the top of the drive bay, it releases the drive so you can simply slide it out. Though almost every NAS has toolless drive bays, I found the quality of these drive bays slightly better than most that I've seen. To install the drives, you just pull off the plastic tabs, slide the drive in place, and push the tabs back in. This is a really similar design to what QNAP does, but these actually have a slightly better feel when you snap the tabs in and hold the drive in place. I went ahead and installed both drives and loaded them back into the NAS so that we could go ahead and run the setup. Once you have your drives in, plug in your network cable and power up the device. Wait a few minutes after you power it on to give it a chance to boot and receive an IP address from your router. There are a couple of different ways to set up the NAS. One way is to go to terra-master.com and use their quick installation guide, which will walk you through the installation. But I opted for using the IP address, which is my preferred way of running and installing most devices that are on my network. Just log into your router and review your DHCP list and get the IP address from the device and just simply type it into your browser. If you're not comfortable with going into your router, stick with the quick install. Once you type the IP address into your browser, it will launch the setup wizard and start the setup process. You'll get a screen that tells you it's loading the bootloader and warn you there are no drives set up in your configuration, and immediately launch the initialization. Click on Start to begin the initialization process. The next screen will warn you about using incompatible drives and provide you with a link to review their compatibility list. I would suggest you review this list just to be on the safe side, and assuming you did that, click Next, and you're taken to the drive initialization screen to select the type of drive setup. Here you have a choice of selecting the default or custom options. For most users, you should select the default unless you're comfortable with RAID types and volumes. By default, TerraMaster uses what they call a T-RAID, which is very similar operationally to the Synology hybrid RAID. It provides you with some flexibility, expandability, and redundancy, and should work best for most use cases. As we're going to do a basic home configuration, we're going to select the default option. You're then warned that your hard drives will be deleted and you need to confirm to continue. It will go to the TOS install process without any further input, but keep in mind this may take some time to finish. It'll take about 8 to 10 minutes and then completely restart the system. Once it restarts, it'll reload the setup page so that you can set up the admin account, which they call Super User. Here you can name your device, create a username and password, and select the time zone. This section is a little different than what I've experienced before. If you typed in an email as part of the admin setup, you need to send a code to that email, which is used for verification and authentication of the admin account. Once you get the code, you can proceed to the next step. However, if you prefer not to go through this step, you can just click on the skip verification and it will take you to the next step. You should, however, make sure that you at least input an email, as that'll be used for future notifications. For this video, I'm going to skip to verification. Once again, you're warned about deleting the data on your hard drives, and once you hit next, you're greeted with the summary screen. Click next and review the EULA and scroll down to the bottom to acknowledge that you read it. Once you confirm, it'll take you to the NAS desktop, and the storage pool manager will automatically start the T-RAID synchronization. This is very similar to all NAS or storage devices that utilize some type of RAID, as the storage pool has to be synchronized. Like all NAS units, this process takes quite a long time to complete. However, you can use the NAS during the process. Be aware it might be a bit slower, as this is a background process that is running. In this setup, using two 6TB RAID drives, it took about 12 hours to complete the synchronization, and as I said, you can still use the NAS normally during this process. So now that we've configured the device and set up the drives, it's time to quickly go over all the options and settings. I'll make some observations and suggestions as we go along. From the storage pool screen, let's click on Home and go through the different settings. Looking at the control panel screen, things are really laid out in a logical fashion and grouped not only by icon but by menu. Clicking on User, we can see the users listed, and if we want to add a new user, just click on the plus sign and fill out the new user information. As you probably don't have user groups, leave the default and hit Next. On the next screen, assign any permissions to folders and select and confirm your settings. The next tab on the left is User Groups. We'll save that for a different video, as for many home applications, this isn't really needed. The next section is very important. This is where you gain the functionality of your NAS unit. By default, your NAS will create a home folder for each user. For example, if we jump over to the File Manager, we can look at the listing of folders. We can see a folder for each user, the admin, and the test user that we just created. Going back to the control panel and selecting Shared Folder, this is where we can create folders on our NAS unit. You can see a public folder, which is also created by default, and clicking on the plus sign allows you to create your own folders. Give your new shared folder a name and select the volume. In most cases, there'll only be one location unless you did an advanced setup and created multiple volumes. We'll cover that in a future video along with encryption. Go ahead and put in a description for the folder, and if you want this folder not to show, then click on the box to hide the folder when browsing your network. Typically, you'll see all the shared folders you have access to when browsing your device from a computer. However, there's some cases where you want the folder hidden from browsing. Click Next, and on the next screen, you can optionally select encryption and create a password. We'll not go into this on this video, so I'll leave it unchecked. You can also enable or disable the recycle bin. For this video, I'll disable the recycle bin and hit Next to continue. You can leave the permission settings at the default and hit Next to continue. On this screen is where you can give one or more users access to this folder, as well as the type of access. Click Next and leave the next section with the defaults and hit Next, where you will be shown a summary screen to review. Assuming everything is okay, select Confirm, and after a few seconds, it'll show you your new shared folder. We'll leave the next sections alone for this video, as they are not needed for a basic configuration. Going back to the next home screen section of the control panel, clicking on Network, we can see the general information about the networking, including the device name, IP address, and port information. I'll skip the rest of these settings in this section, as they're more advanced and are not needed in this basic setup. Clicking on File Service by default, the SMB is enabled, as this is needed for all file sharing. Though not needed by everyone, AFP is also enabled by default. The rest of the services are disabled, as they should be. In the Terminal and SNMP section, the defaults are set up correctly for best security practices. Moving on to the Discovery service, again the defaults are set up for best security practices, and we can leave them all as is. We'll skip the Media Index section for this video and move to the Storage Manager from the control panel. Clicking on Volume, you'll see a listing of your current volumes, which most likely will only have one volume, and show you the status of it. The Storage Pool section again shows you the status of your storage pool and the RAID technology that it's using. The Hard Drive section gives you an overview of your hard drives. We'll skip the remaining sections as they're more hardware dependent and will only be available if your hardware supports it, or in the case of USB if you have one installed. Moving to the next section of the control panel and selecting region and language, we can set the time zone and create the date and time format. We'll skip the rest of these as they will stay at the default settings. Moving over to the hardware section, we can see the fan setting, which by default is set to automatic. I did want to point out that the fan on this barely comes on and is extremely quiet out of the box. Other than when you boot the device, you never really hear the fan. It's pretty quiet. We can leave the power section at the default settings, and unless you plug this into a UPS, which I really recommend you do, nothing will be listed. Moving down to the notifications, you can select what type of notifications you want. It'll send it to the email account you used during setup, or you can add different emails below. In the server section, you can leave the defaults or set up your own email server if you prefer. For this video, I'm just going to leave the default. The next section is security, and this is the area that impressed me with the defaults. The defaults in this section are extremely important, and looking at this, it's obvious they gave this some thought. In the general section, we'll leave all the defaults. You can change the automatic logout if you want, but for me, the defaults were fine. We'll skip the certificate section, and under firewall, by default, there won't be anything listed there. If there's any interest, I can do a quick firewall setup video. The next section is account. You can leave this at the default or increase the lockout time. In my opinion, I would make this a little bit longer and probably change it to 15 to 30 minutes. The DOS tab is enabled, and in the next tab, this is a unique setting called Security Isolation Mode, which I think is pretty awesome and should be on every NAS unit. Enabling this effectively isolates your NAS to local access only and prevents the device from accessing internal sites, as well as blocks access from internal sites. It also prevents unsigned applications from running, as well as any application based on PHP programs. It even blocks its own cloud service from running. In my opinion, this is absolutely fantastic option to have. It's off by default, as this is something that you really have to deliberately set. But I wish other manufacturers would include something like this that can be just set directly from the control panel. Moving over to the system section is the update section. The auto updates is off by default, and I would probably suggest enabling this. In the configuration section is where you can reset, backup, or restore a configuration. Moving to the last section and selecting overview, you have all the stats on your hardware, including CPU, RAM, and network. Next, you have the resource monitor, and the rest of this section is additional information on what's running, as well as the system log. Doing a quick file copy test, as you can see, the device is capable of copying around 85 to 100 megs a second on a 1 gig network, which is actually pretty good. It's slightly slower than other devices I've tested, but only by a really small amount, which is most likely due to software RAID, as well as the speed of the drives that I'm using. But overall, the performance was really good. Like the competitors, TerraMaster has a pretty decent set of applications to choose from. They've broken down the app into recommended, all, and community apps or third-party apps. When you look at the community apps, it warns you that these are provided and supported by third-party developers and not by TerraMaster. If you've used a NAS before, you'll feel right at home as everything is pretty clearly laid out. And if you're new to NAS units, you'll probably find the general layout pretty intuitive. Given that most of the defaults are secure out of the box, it's a really good choice for a new user or an experienced one even. Not having used the TerraMaster before, everything worked out of the box and it was a very smooth and easy installation. If you're comfortable with using the IP, the device is extremely easy to set up and configure. The main thing for me is that they've taken security seriously and they've made it easy to lock down this unit. Most importantly, it's easy to operate as a local device, and you're not forced into setting up a cloud account to be able to use this device, which I truly appreciate. All in all, this is a great unit that truly surprised me. Given the price point, I didn't have high expectations, but I was really wrong. I would not hesitate to recommend this NAS unit to a new user. This experience really makes me wonder what their higher-end units are like. I'll be doing more videos to test media streaming and other functions, so if there's something you'd like to see, please post it in the comments below. Anyway, that's about it for today's video, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this useful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.